what is this review if I don't ask you the question? Does David Cronenberg just need to hang up the directing chair?
Yeah, Jamesy!
Drive-by movies, you're watching
Fresh releases.
My name's Blaise.
And my name is James.
And this week we're talking about the brand new film, Infinity Pool.
It's really disgusting. You could just sit there and watch it happen.
You know, James, do you worry they got the wrong man?
Infinity Pool comes from Brandon Cronenberg, and it's about James and M. Foster, who are enjoying an all-inclusive beach vacation in the fictional island of Latolka when a fatal accident exposes the resort's perverse subculture of hedonistic tourism, reckless violence, and surreal horrors. So, this is the third film, I believe, from Brandon Cronenberg, not including any short films, but third feature length. We reviewed Possessor when we were kind of really finding our footing with fresh releases, especially during quarantine as well. That was like one of the first movies I think that came out during quarantine that we're like, finally something good coming out of this pandemic. And I really enjoyed it. Still haven't gone around to seeing Antiviral. I know you've seen it, Blaise. This is his third film. Had great reviews. It's now on demand, so we finally got around to checking it out. Blaise, what are your initial thoughts?
So this is one where I felt like as soon, like even before I started, I felt like buckle up. May not, like you may not be coming back the same as how in which you entered. I guess similar to how James appears in this film, essentially. But yeah, like I feel like I immediately dove in and was like enjoyed like the plot and everything going on, and there was a lot going on. I felt like this film, there's a lot going on. There's something to like about that, and the fact that not pretty much like almost nothing is explained at times, like, and it does leave you thinking. I don't know if it really like almost makes the movie better in that sense or worse. I just appreciate not being treated as like a dumb audience member. But overall, I have to say, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. There was some times where I felt like maybe this is taking way too much of a mental leap. But to be honest, I don't really know when this even takes place, really. So is it sci-fi? Who knows? I'm not really sure, I mean, some of the aspects in the film are sci-fi, but is this like super far in the future, or is it, in present day? Or was it 10 years ago? Who knows?
That's a good question, yeah, because it kind of has that like timeless setting versus Possessor kind of having that weird like I don't know, kind of like steampunk feel to it, just because the technology felt very modern, even though it wasn't really like a futuristic movie per se. It's just like weird technology kind of thrown into Brandon Cronenberg's movies that don't need any explanation. We know what they do. But just it's not a realistic thing that exists. Well, at least not that we are aware of. But I like that we kind of go into these movies with like a timeless setting where it could have taken place 10 years from now, or could have taken place 10 years ago. Like, it's hard to say. And very much like how that movie was not so much a horror film, but still had horror elements. Definitely see what you're saying. This movie still is more of a drama per se, but has a lot of fantastic sci-fi feel and vibes to it, as well as horror elements too, with of course the sick gore that we see within this movie. Definitely not as violent as his last film, but still there's still some shocking sequences that I'm sure a lot of people probably went in seeing this movie being like, oh, Mia Goth, Alexander Skarsgård, and like, oh my god, what am I watching?
Yeah, there's definitely like I would say equal amounts of like pretty insane gore. But I think Possessor tops it with just that opening sequence of like, if you're not into that, you're going to leave within like the first like 5 minutes of the film. If I remember correctly how that film starts. Yeah, it's definitely one that's, you're probably exiting the theater because you buckle up. So I think that also is what made me feel like, dude, I got to buckle up. This is another Brandon Cronenberg adventure. I don't know what I'm going to be getting into. And I mean, we got to just get right into it. I think this film was really kept under wraps, which I appreciate, at least a lot of the plot stuff. I didn't really know too much going into it. The trailer just showed these like weird masks, and even the masks don't really like spoil the movie's creative endeavors that it explores, but it's really about like, I guess, is it cloning? They call it doubling. Are they clones? I'm not really even sure. I feel like they don't really go into it that much, or maybe I missed something, but the aspect of these different body doubles, I guess you could say, or clones, it was very interesting, you know, built on top of the whole like exotic getaway vacation type stuff where these people are kind of going to just do whatever they want that they can't do back home almost. And then when they almost get this weird like get out of jail free card that the government almost essentially gives them, it feels like, because they just pay their way out of anything.
Technically, yeah, that is the case for Alexander James's character. But then, you know, as we learn, though, people go there every year to take advantage of this messed up government perk that they have for technically rich people. Like, yeah, you could claim it's for scientific purposes or whatever, but we see that the rich takes advantage of it to make the entire country their playground to do whatever they want. And like, you know, I don't want to spoil too much, but you see how they react towards the end of the movie. But it's just like a really interesting take on just like how the rich will treat the poor, and how someone who is poor but comes from a wealthy family is treated among, like, it's just a weird take on like hazing kind of within like a fraternity or, you know, rich like groups and stuff, and how they would act if they had more money and stuff and could take full on advantage of just having that power of like not being able to hear the words no and just do whatever you want. It's a really interesting take, and I really went into this movie blind, not knowing what it was about. I just knew it was a Brandon Cronenberg movie. I knew I wanted to see it. I was a little annoyed going in, just thinking that Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård were going to be like married, just because last year, one thing I like, Alexander Skarsgård, beautiful man, but he's almost 50, and like with like 25-year-old Anya Taylor-Joy in The Northman last year, and then Mia Goth, who's also in her 20s. I know she's like closer to 30, but like I was just like, come on, like I'm tired of this like trope in Hollywood. He's a beautiful man. I believe he can date these girls, but like let's stop putting people like 15 to 25 years apart. But in this movie, it worked out in the favor of just like she's dating a very rich, wealthy person, and they're not even together. Also, of course, there's some sparks there, as you will see within the movie and stuff. But yeah, this movie went in a direction I just absolutely did not expect it to go, and I'm glad I went in blind.
Yeah, and that whole direction that it goes, and just kind of the plot of the movie that I felt like was kept so well. And at least, I mean, maybe this film did do well at the box office, correct? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it did well, or at least a lot of people were going to see it. It did more than it was supposed to, right?
I assume it did. I mean, I know that it like had some hype. It probably did like fairly well, like X did, where I wouldn't say it's like a huge box office smash, but it got great reviews. I'm sure it's going to keep doing well on demand, and is going to keep doing well just because Mia Goth has a pretty big fan base, from what I understand, on TikTok, I guess. And, you know, Brandon Cronenberg is just going to keep gaining traction, I feel like. Same thing with Alexander Skarsgård. He's always had a relatively, like, you know, dedicated fan base from him being in True Blood. So, you know, I assume it's been doing well, and I assume Brandon Cronenberg's just going to keep getting work too, not just because of Dad, but he's made 3 really impressive movies, I'd say, even though I haven't seen his first one.
And I mean, what is this review if I don't ask you the question that everyone is not asked yet, I feel like, but should be asked? Is the torch already been passed? We saw Crimes of the Future last year. Does David Cronenberg just need to hang up the directing chair and just pass it on to his son? I mean, his son has already made 3 movies in the span. I think he's only made 1, if I remember correctly. So or 1 or maybe 2, sorry. But, you know, is the torch been passed?
I honestly think so. Like, yeah, I mean, I believe that David Cronenberg still has 1 really great movie that he can push out there. I really hope he doesn't retire with Crimes of the Future. You know, that was a long-awaited return for him, and it was just so. If you watch our review, we just kind of felt like it was just bland and just whatever, it wasn't for us. I know that was like a critic darling for the most part, but you know, I think Brandon Cronenberg, even though like, you know, he has his dad's name, it got the whole gory feel and some interesting like body horror moments, but his stuff still feels very different. And I wouldn't say like he's found a style just yet, like just because this movie and Possessor, like nothing really like is like speaks out to me being like, these are Brandon Cronenberg movies. They're just really well told stories, great scripts I like, and just like are heavy on the gory aspect, I'd say. But like, you know, I'm just interested to see where he goes next. And I think like he should keep going, and David should just be the outspoken, the biggest cheerleader for his son at this point. Yeah,
definitely. It's funny because you do the fact that you mentioned that he doesn't really have, you know, this calling card yet in a sense of like what his style is, what are these things he tackles. It's funny because I feel like you're totally right there, but then at the same time, the state of like cinema at the moment, in the like the degrading state that we see is like, I do feel in a sense because he's the only one getting these movies made. The other person that was, you know, up for be starring in this movie is like Robert Pattinson. So it's really right now at the moment, I feel like we really just have either Alexander Skarsgård movies, Robert Pattinson movies, or just any whatever blockbuster fare you got. But like they're picking the more interesting projects, and being that this is like probably one of the most interesting movies of this year so far, it does feel like in a sense that regardless of if he has found his style or not, he has kind of carved out his own little niche in cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to hear it too. I know that I saw in our fun facts about the movie, Robert Pattinson was rumored to be within this movie. And while that would definitely mix better with the age range that I was like talking about earlier, like I said, after watching the movie, Alexander Skarsgård, you know, feels appropriate for the role, being like, you know, this writer character, and then seeing who Mia Goth is as a person, who her husband is within the movie. But yeah, you're totally right though. Both are picking the more interesting movies, I'd say. Like, of course, both are doing those big, like, you know, Skarsgård was in Godzilla versus King Kong, Pattinson's the new Batman and stuff. But, you know, both still well-received movies. They're picking, I'm sure they're like, the script's fine, I'll do this, of course. But then also they're choosing movies like this and Good Time as well. So, you know, like, here for it, and just here for Brandon Cronenberg. 2 for 2 for me. I will probably check out Antiviral sometimes this year. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the movie? Is it overrated, or do you agree with the critics or us? Leave a comment below letting us know what you thought about the movie. A great way to also help support the show is by watching it through our Amazon affiliate link in our description box below.
And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates.
And if you can't get enough of us here on YouTube, catch all our social media links down below for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. That'll conclude this week's episode. Tune in next week for a brand new video.